And now, the only survival show that'll realign your survival chi chakras. In this episode, we sit down once again with Lauren Wilson, pro cook and author of the book, The Art of Eating Through the Zombie Apocalypse. We discuss what happens when you take wild turkey, a donkey, a herd of goats, a duck, and chickens to the grassy knoll. The short answer, it's a West Coast party. We learn all about apprenticing on a farm in the process. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode 139. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Lauren, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And we were just talking, it seems like since we had you out on last, but it actually wasn't that long ago. It was just a lot's happened, especially for you. You've been off with shenanigans and goats and life adventures. What's been going on?
I love how you paired the word shenanigans with goats. I think that was a very apropos pairing because goats get into all kinds of shenanigans.
Yes, they do.
I spent 3 months in Northern California doing some goat farming, which was just from top to bottom an incredible experience. Goats are they're just amazing little creatures. They have such personalities. Of course, they get into all kinds of mischief, and they're just a joy to be around, really.
Before we dive all the way in today, a quick message. Help us keep the lights on. Support the ITRH show and mission by becoming part of the Roving Horde Armada. You can learn more at itrh.net about all the great benefits membership gets you. Things like encrypted forums with member-only access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one that has never been aired before, a free copy of the book Owning Your Survival, 9 Steps for Surviving, Survival, and Preparedness, access to a 1-hour emergency kits for bugging out and bugging in class with special downloads. And that's just to name a few of the great things you get with your membership. Again, visit itrh.net for more details now. We're counting on supporting members just like you to help us keep the lights on. Now, back to Lauren. Now, before we get back to the goats, I gotta hear about this turkey story.
Okay.
All right, now, Lauren, you were telling me a little bit before we started about some violent turkey attacks. This sounds very serious. So
Yes.
what is this all about?
So there was a naturally present wild turkey population in and around the area that I was living. And this year, for the first year, these turkeys started to become violent and actually attack people. So it was the toms, it was the males, especially during mating season and when the females were laying and taking care of eggs. The males just became so protective that if you came within 10 feet, the males would come at you and attack you and peck you. I never was physically attacked. I was definitely rushed at, and I got caught in it was a little temple, so this tiny little building where people would go to meditate, and I ran in there and looked out the window, and this tom circled this little temple for 20 minutes, and I was stuck inside because I was terrified, and of course they can tell when you're scared, and so I didn't.
Turkeys can smell your fear.
Well, wild turkeys are not small. They were quite big.
Yes.
And being the city girl that I am, I just freaked out and screamed and ran inside. And so this tom circled for 20 minutes, and I was just stuck in there because there was no way I was going outside to face him in any capacity. And then eventually, I guess he forgot or got bored or whatever and left. But so there was a real problem with these turkeys attacking people. And it was the talk of the community every day for a month straight. It would be at every meal, oh, did you hear about so-and-so got attacked? And well, actually, and they were so dumb too that oftentimes they would see, if a car's paint was very reflective and they saw themselves in the paint of the car, they would attack the car. They would just, it was really quite funny. But the community practiced nonviolence, so they didn't want to kill these turkeys. So there was a really ongoing conversation about, well, how should we deal with them? What is the most humane thing we can do? And eventually they hired an outside hunter from like a nearby town to come in. So the hunter came in, dispatched of the turkeys,
Mm-hmm.
and then they gave the because they are also vegetarians, so they didn't want to eat the turkeys. So then the turkeys were then given to like local families who would then consume them. So the violent turkeys unfortunately met their demise. But it honestly made every day when I would be walking around, like you constantly had to be prepared for these turkeys. And like some people figured out that if you walked around with an umbrella, and when the turkey got all agitated, because the Tom would see you, he'd get agitated and he'd like extend this huge fan of tail feathers. So if you opened up the umbrella back at him, it's sort of, again, they're not terribly smart. It would think you're a big turkey and sort of back off. I never did the umbrella trick. I probably should have tried it, but often like you, even if you just carried like a really big branch around with you and sort of just like made a lot of movement, they would sort of back down. But really in truth, I think that the biggest thing was just not having fear, and if they could sense that you were like, no, you're not going to mess with me. That was usually enough, but I was never that person. I was always that like the person that was like, ah! And I'd like run away, and they'd just run after me. So, yeah, the wild turkeys.
So, survival tip here: when in the middle of a big turkey revolt, carry an umbrella.
Yes,
that's that's quite a story.
Yeah.
That had to be really hard for the community, though. I mean, as far as bringing in that outside hunter.
Yeah.
Because, I can only imagine. Because, I mean, if they're this big nonviolence thing, and then it's like, well, all right, we're going to bring in somebody who we don't necessarily agree with. That had to actually be pretty serious on some level that they were willing to go to that length. I mean, I've been sitting here cracking up, but it had to have been pretty serious for them.
It was not funny at the time, I'll tell you. Like, I mean, I sort of always kind of felt that it was humorous, even when I was being attacked by it. It was like, it's funny. These wild turkeys are attacking people, okay. But it was a serious subject, and they were very thoughtful about what to do because they didn't want to kill the turkeys. But they sort of observed the population for long enough, too, that they were able to figure out, okay, this Tom, like these two Toms that are with this group, like they figured out who the troublemakers were and just took care of those particular turkeys. So I think ultimately only 2 or 3 turkeys ended up being killed. Yeah, but it was a serious business there.
We're putting down this turkey revolt?
Yeah, exactly.
This will end? Oh my God, that's too funny. Yeah. I am glad you shared that story with me. That is really quite comical. Okay, so let's circle back around to back to the goat farming adventures that started all this.
So I was with a herd that had 30 males and in and around 20 females. But by the time I left, there had been like 12 babies born. So the numbers on both of those went up. Yeah. So I was with a herd of about 50, 60 and just saw the whole process of caring for them, from basic barn chores to shepherding to milking to cheese making. And it was, quite an experience. It was awesome.
So was it, you went to the farm and they were like, okay, lady, here's your 50 goats, go out in the field and have fun? Or was it, there were a lot more goats than that? How did that work?
No. Well, I worked with the woman who runs the dairy. Her name is Virani, and she oversees everything. Well, in fact, she works tirelessly. So the dairy itself is set within a community of about 200 people that live. It's outside of Nevada City, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Sacramento. So this was her baby. This was her dairy, and I was just sort of there to help. So I was her apprentice, and she sort of showed me the ropes of her system and how she did things. And so, I started off with pretty basic tasks, like barn cleaning and stuff like that. As I was there for longer, got to see more and more of what she did day to day. So yeah, that was sort of the setting.
How big of an adjustment for you was it? Because I'm assuming this was pretty far out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
How big of an adjustment was that for you coming from New York?
Honestly, it was a welcome change. It was really, beautiful country and peaceful and quiet. And it was great. There wasn't really much of an adjustment. There was more of an adjustment coming back to New York City. And then having to reacquaint myself with the noise and the humidity and the stink that is prevalent throughout the summer. So The adjustment was more on that end than it was in getting there.
That makes sense. Now, did you have a hard time falling asleep without the noise? Because I have a friend that moved from here to actually, I think in your neck of the woods exactly.
Uh-huh.
And whenever he comes back, he always crashes at my house, and he's like, I can't sleep without the noise. It's really bothering me. Did you have that
Oh
problem?
no, thankfully I did not have that problem. I've been blessed as being the kind of person that can like put my head down on a pillow and be out within like 5 minutes. So no, I thankfully did not have any trouble falling asleep.
Oh, good. So now, what prompted you to go off to a goat farm?
Hmm. To be honest, it just sort of happened in that I had the opportunity to sublet my apartment to a few friends. And so when I found out they were looking for a place to stay, I just thought, why don't I just take this opportunity to go and do something for those 4 months and not have to worry about paying my rent? So that was basically how it happened. And then once I decided I was going to go away, I sort of just started looking for programs specifically. So what I did was a work-live program. And so I was working for the dairy, but then they were covering my accommodations and food and stuff like that. So,
So
yeah.
did you basically live off goat cheese the entire time you were there? Or?
No, I didn't. I didn't. So part of the program, I was goat farming, but I was also helping run a yoga meditation retreat center that the community has. And so I was basically just eating. It was all vegetarian food, but I was eating, the stuff that they were serving at the retreat center. So it was all very delicious food.
Well, that's quite an adventure. You had a full-on goat hippie kind of summer, didn't you?
Yes, that's exactly it. I've been describing it as getting my hippie on. That's exactly what I did. Yeah, it was awesome.
So you did, I mean, it was a full range of essentially shepherding. I don't know if it's goats. Is it? Yeah, I guess that is shepherding.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. Like, walk us through the process of what is involved in taking care of a 50 head of goat?
Well, so I mean, it can be done in a variety of ways. This particular dairy is a humane dairy, which means they don't kill any animals for food. Virani does milk the goats, but that's basically it. So the herd of 30 males, those are essentially they're used as really fire control. Like they just go out to pasture and like will cut down fire hazard and like basically just eat greenery and sort of mow down areas to minimize the fire hazard in those particular areas that they're grazing. So that's what the guys do, the males do. And then the females also live on pasture, but they're basically just eating so that they can feed the babies, but then also produce milk for cheese making. So that's sort of how the herd is separated, the boys and the girls, and they're doing their own things. And every day in the morning, Virani gets up, milks the goats, and then takes the girls out to pasture. The boys are sort of just off doing their thing. They are in a spot, and she moves them around to different spots. And the girls have more of a routine because of the milking. And so, yeah, brings them out to pasture, and then the girls eat happily all day long, and then come back home at night, get a nice little treat of hay, and then, go to sleep. And they have probably the best goat lives I could possibly imagine. They are just happy little creatures. They're out in the fresh air, and it's gorgeous, beautiful land up there. That's sort of how the operation works.
Wow, it's like goat nirvana out there, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really is goat nirvana.
Going with the hippie theme. So this was actually a thing Jason and I guess this was about 2 years ago, looked into getting pygmy goats.
Mm-hmm.
It was more me than him. He just kind of looked at me and was like shaking his head. But I thought, well, that'll be cool because we had a little urban farm here, and we certainly had the space for pygmy goats. We didn't have the space for full-size goats. But the issue we ran into was, since it was a milking animal, I don't even remember the full details. I know we've covered it in a past episode, but it was a milking animal, and there was some kind of disease the city was worried about, so you had to have a $500 permit. And there was testing that had to be done, and you could only have one. And I was like, well, what's the point of that? That seems like a whole lot of work for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up not doing it, but I was always curious, and a little bit that I was reading about goats leading up to that final conclusion of, no, we're not doing this, was they seem pretty easy to take care of for the most part.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do seem pretty easy to take care of, at least from what I saw, especially when most of their diet is being provided by the wild, by pasture. Their diets were definitely supplemented with all kinds of other good things because, so Virani worked in partnership with people in the community, but then also with the meditation retreat center, and was able to just goats will eat many, many things. I mean, not all things they should eat, but they were able to eat like tons of fruit peels. Like they love citrus peels and they love banana peels. And so basically, they were able to produce quite a nice little closed loop system in terms of using up their compostable food scraps. The goats ate a lot of those. And then in turn, the goat manure was used to create compost. And so from top to bottom, it was sort of like a closed loop system, which was pretty awesome.
That's interesting about the goat manure. It sounds like it's probably pretty close to sheep manure and rabbit manure, and that it's pretty heavily processed and not a hot manure.
No. Yeah, it's a lot of little pellets.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I know there's only a few animals that their manure can pretty much go straight on plants and vegetation and not burn the vegetation. What was the cheese making process like?
It's a non-complicated process, and I mean the herd isn't huge. Essentially, most of the milk was just sort of sold as milk. People wanted it's fresh raw goat milk, but the cheese making mostly was feta and chev. It was a very simple, straightforward cheese making process. Feta and chev are very easy cheeses to make. Sometimes she would make some cheddar, but that was a process that unfortunately I didn't get as involved in as I would have liked to, because I spent a lot of time shepherding and doing other things with the goats. But it was just, I mean, it was just delicious cheese. Like when goats are happy and they're producing good milk, it just makes delicious cheese and it makes delicious milk. And you could just taste the grassiness because when I was there, especially it was spring, and so there was lots and lots of vegetation, and they were eating lots and lots of greenery, and it made for delicious, just clean tasting milk. It was very little processing was happening, very little additives. Like the ingredients were so simple, and yeah, so it was delicious.
I mean, it would stand to reason. How much of a difference does, say, what the goats eat have? What kind of impact does that have on the milk?
That's a good question. From what I tasted, and I mean, I tasted the milk fairly frequently. I didn't, depending on, I couldn't taste big differences. Like, oh, they're eating a lot more of X because they've been out in this area and there's a lot of, let's say, blackberry bushes or whatever. At least maybe through time you could develop such a sensitivity, especially if you're the farmer and you're tasting that milk every day. I imagine you could develop a sensitivity to sort of taste like, oh, okay, I see the flavor profile is changing thusly, but I wasn't able to pick up on that. To me, it mostly just tasted really grassy, like a general greenery kind of flavor to it. Yeah.
Wouldn't have expected that. That's interesting. So what all is involved in shepherding goats?
So I think goats really do enjoy a routine. And so every morning after the girls were done being milked, they started just sort of heading up to the impasse where they knew that they were going to be brought through. So there's Virani does something called closed channeling. So you can either shepherd your goats. Basically, if you're really good and you've got a good command of your herd, you can sort of just like open them up and they will just sort of mostly follow your command and follow you through. A more safe way and kind of fail-safe way of doing it is closed channeling. So you just basically create with like movable fences a channel through which the goats can pass. And so, especially me being a new shepherd, I was closed channeling them. And so every morning the girls would get up to where they needed to be, and then I would just set up a channel for them with fences to go through, open up the gate. They would go through to the area that they needed to be in that day, and then I would close off the channel and they would be in their area for the day. And because it was literally nestled within the community, and so there was private property sort of nestled in here and there. Electrified fences were used too, sort of just to keep them in. Although even still, like sometimes electrified fences go down and you don't know, and then the goats figure that out and they like push the fences down, and then you've got a major goat escape, which has happened once or twice, and then you sort of have to go and get them all together and get them back into where they need to be. So that's always fun. You get a call from someone in the community who's like, yeah, the goats are out. They're in my backyard.
This is totally random. There was actually an alert earlier in the week here that there was like a goat loose in the neighborhood. And there's a very large Hispanic population a few blocks to my east. And so it was like, yeah, it's probably somebody's dinner that got away. And so, yeah, but that's funny as far as I imagine goats going back to where we started, really getting into some shenanigans. And I mean, that's certainly one example of it. But I mean, I guess as far as, what do you do as a shepherd besides just kind of moving them? What do you do with the rest of the time? Sit, read a book, watch the goats?
Oh, gosh, no. I mean, I was there for, depending on the day, maybe like 6 to 8 hours. But Virani, who runs the dairy, like her days are 12 14-hour days. She's up at like 6 a.m. She's milking. There are like little periods of downtime here and there. She also had chickens and ducks that she cared for. But it's just like, it's a full on, like most farming and agricultural jobs, it's like full on.
Mm-hmm.
When I was not, doing like barn chores or shepherding or helping with milking or whatever, I was off at the meditation retreat doing other work. But yeah, she's worked tirelessly. She started the dairy about 6 years ago, and she was basically just running it by herself for many years before they started, sending some of these people that were in the work live program over to help her. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So you don't just take them out to the field and stand there and stare at them all day, I guess.
No. Then because they're contained with the fences, as I said. So they sort of just do their thing during the day. And then, I would get back to the barn. And once they were out of the barn, I would clean it and then clean the yard. Because goats do poop a lot. Mm. I would say most of my time was spent cleaning up goat poop. So yeah, do the barn chores. And then there's lots of other things to do. There's caring, like I said, there's caring for the chicken and the ducks, and they need stuff to be done for them every day. Mm. So yeah, and going on egg hunts and fun, because ducks will kind of lay their eggs anywhere. Chickens are a little more regimented with where they like to lay, but ducks is always fun because they do have spots where they like to lay, but then they'll kind of just lay anywhere. So you kind of have to go on a little egg hunt every day, which was fun.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, when we had chickens, most of them, it was pretty rare that we would find the kind of errant egg. Mm-hmm. Often in a strange place. And most of the time it was just because all the girls were kind of synced up. Yeah. And so they're nesting, even though we had 4 nesting boxes, which seemed like it was going to be enough. When we got up to the point where we went a little over our limit by double and got to 40 chickens, we started running into issues where occasionally we would find an egg down kind of underneath in some of the straw underneath the nesting boxes, and you could tell the girls were just like, I can't hold it, and just and just decided to drop an egg wherever they were waiting on their turn at the nesting box. Was this your first experience with dealing with chickens?
It was my first experience dealing with any wildlife farm animals, really. So yeah, it was. The chickens are funny. They're funny creatures.
Yes, they are.
When they seem to, they have their natural rhythms and routines, and every morning after the goats went out, they would start to get into their laying time, and they would just, I would say there were maybe 8 laying boxes. And how many chickens were there? Maybe about 30. So I would think that seemed adequate, but there, certain girls liked certain boxes. And if there was another girl on the box, and they would stand outside the box and just squawk at them, and okay, can you please get out of there? It's my turn. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. But yes, it was my first experience with chicken.
I think one of the funniest things I ever saw was we had a few chickens that were just bullies. We had some buff Orpingtons that would push around our Americanas, mm-hmm. and they would just get in the box with the other chicken, and you'd see these 2 hens in there pecking back and forth, and usually the Americana was looking very nervous, like, make her stop. Chickens are characters.
They are characters.
This is weird. Which did you prefer cleaning up the least? Cleaning up after the least? Because that's one of those things people don't think of, but when you get into dealing with animals, farming animals, that becomes your thing. Like Jason and I would kind of argue over who not very much, but we would be like, it's your turn to clean the chicken coop. Most of the time I would trick him into doing it.
Yep. Nope. That's it. Yep. That was very true too. People I was working with, it was usually I was by myself, so I would be doing everything. Mm. And so when I was by myself, I would always leave the chicken coop for last because it was my least favorite. The chicken coop was my least favorite. Goat pellets are fairly easy to clean up. They don't smell. It's just, you just sort of do it. But chickens, their messes are a little stinkier and messier. And so, yeah, chicken was definitely my least favorite. And when anyone that was there helping me, it would always be like, okay, who's going to do the chicken coop?
Chickens are nasty.
Yeah, they are.
For such cute animals, they're nasty.
But they are nasty.
So now that's interesting because I've never dealt with ducks before, and you were saying there were ducks involved.
Yep.
I would have thought ducks being, much larger than chickens would be, I don't know, 4 times the poop or something, or 4 times as
No,
large.
but ducks also, so the area in which they were living was fairly earthy and oftentimes muddy, because ducks like muck. Mm. And so, but they didn't really poop in their enclosure too much. There was here and there, but I would say it's fairly similar in terms of the consistency to chicken manure, but it's not nearly as smelly, and there was not nearly as much of it. They sort of would just do their business in the great out of doors, whereas chickens, especially because chickens were closed up in the coop at night, so it gets concentrated in that area.
So the ducks weren't being cooped the way the chickens were? Like, I
Not
have
in
no
quite
idea
the
how
same
ducks
way.
work.
Well, they were in an enclosure, and then within the enclosure, they had sort of like their duck house, but it wasn't like closed off and sealed up at night. They just sort of went in there, and then the greater enclosure they were in was safe enough to keep predators out.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. They would actually go do their business out in the yard and not
Mhm.
in there. Because chickens, it's just wherever the chicken is where the chicken does.
Yes.
Chicken's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You're cleaning it up. It's not my problem.
Exactly.
Hey, do something about this stuff. Getting a little stinky in here. So that's interesting. How was it to care for the ducks?
Oh, it was great. The ducks are funny because they became the chickens too. I mean, sort of knew when it was time for them to be fed and when the food was coming, and they became especially the mothers with the little chicks. Um, you know, well, I mean, the mothers are protecting their baby chicks from the rest of the chickens too, because there is that pecking order.
Yeah.
And the babies became very good at knowing that I was going to give them like some extra special feed, and so I would take them off away from the rest of the girls so they could go and because the other girls loved this, like it was like baby starter feed, and so it was like really high in fat and protein and stuff, and everyone loved it. But the babies became very good at knowing that I was going to go and sneakily feed them somewhere else, and so the babies would sort of just run off to the little area where I wanted to feed them. But the ducks, when they knew it was lunchtime, they would just quack at you. There were runners and muscovies. So muscovies are pretty quiet, but the runners are real talkers. And so when they saw me coming and it was lunchtime, they'd just be like, wah, 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 wah. And it's like, it's time for lunch, feed me now. So yeah, the ducks were a lot of fun to care for. But otherwise, they're like chickens, they're not really much interested in you, and they don't really care when you're around, and they sort of just go about their business.
Mm-hmm. They're just like, feed me, go away, clean up my poop, go away.
Exactly.
That's interesting about the difference in how noisy they are. We experienced that in the difference between our Australorps, Buff Orpingtons, and Americanas.
Uh-huh.
The Australorps were kind of interested in us. They're so close to Orpingtons. The Orpingtons, whenever you came into kind of the farm area, they were up in your business. And they were like, what are you doing? What's going on? And do you have anything in your pocket for me? The Americanas would want nothing to do with you. They were like, just get away from me, go clean up my coop, feed me, and get out of my farm.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to see the different personalities by breed. And I mean, that's funny. You were saying like quiet versus, and so our Orpingtons were really loud. I mean, they would talk to us and they would tell us all about it. Whereas the rest of them really wanted nothing to do with us, except maybe our Americana rooster, Randy. He was usually like, okay, what are you doing? You're too close to my girls. Get back. So yeah, it's interesting to see the kind of personality of the different animals and the different breeds within the different species and stuff like that.
It is very interesting. And I really enjoyed getting to learn like the different squawks meant. Like there was a very specific squawk for I want to lay an egg versus like a squawk that like you're just in my space, or I'm just feeling like I want to be talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So over time I was sort of able to learn to pick up the differences between those two.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. You do develop an ear for it. I think the funniest is I'm gonna go lay an egg squawk, and then there's I just laid an egg, and the entire universe needs to know about it.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've never understood. And it's funny. I was reading a few chicken books when we first got into it, and basically all the authors are like, well, I can make up a bunch of theories, but at the end of the day, no one has any idea why these damn birds are so excited about the fact that they laid an egg.
But also, it doesn't really make much sense from an evolutionary perspective why they would be announcing it.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much are the pop-top food of the animal kingdom, so you'd think that, for the most part, they'd shut the hell up and stay as small and quiet as possible. But no, they're like, I'm here, come and eat me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm laying eggs, so you can please eat those too.
Yes. Yes. So did y'all have any predator problems, given all the animals?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely, there were predators around and raccoons visited. And in fact, the goats, there were some mountain lions. They weren't seen regularly, but they were seen occasionally. And so the goats had burro, donkey protectors or keepers, and the donkeys would travel with the herds, the males and the females. There was one with each, just like scare off anything that might show up at night. And donkey brays are very loud, and they can be like, even when they're not aggressive, even when they're just talking to you, it's like really loud and it can sound quite intimidating. So the donkeys were great at sort of protecting the goats. And as far as the chickens and ducks go, occasionally, while I was there, we lost a couple to a raccoon. Sometimes, like things just like they are well protected, but sometimes, the gate isn't closed quite right, or raccoons are clever little guys. And so it's just the reality of keeping animals that sometimes these things are going to happen. But for the most part, it wasn't a terrible problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting about the donkey thing. Jason and another friend of ours, Scooter's been into micro ranching for a little while now and is transitioning to his own land and starting to get more and more animals and stuff like that. But that was one of the big things, because we have a huge problem with coyotes down here. And so he's like, yeah, I got to go pick out an ass. And then when he first said it, I was like, what? what are we talking? What are we talking about? And then he was like, a donkey. And I was like, all right, well, I don't know. It's Saturday night. I mean, we could be talking about all kinds of things. So, but then he was starting to explain it, and I was like, that's wild. I never knew. Because I mean, my main experience outside of our little urban farm was dealing with horses, and horses, it's not a big deal with the coyotes, so it was never something to think about. So when I first learned about, donkeys, they're like the bouncers of the farm, was just hysterical to me.
Yeah, I hadn't known either. I was like, why are there donkeys with the goats? And then once I figured out, and then once I saw the donkeys sort of get kind of up in arms and anxious and doing their thing, I was like, okay, I get it. Yeah, these guys are intimidating. Coyotes would definitely not want to mess with an upset donkey.
I don't want to mess with an upset donkey. What? So, not that I mess with a lot of donkeys, and sometimes species don't really get along very well. And, donkeys are known as jackasses. How did the goats and the donkey get along? Does the donkey think he's a goat, or how does that work?
No, the donkeys that were caring for these goats, their names were Jenny and Lily. And they sort of just totally got exactly what they needed to be doing. And in fact, when I was out herding the goats, if I wasn't keeping up with the herd, the donkey would come up behind me and push me along. It's like, keep moving, lady. I'm shepherding you.
Who's in charge here?
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, the goats were very responsive to the donkey. And so I don't know if they were necessarily scared or intimidated, but they certainly knew that the donkey was in charge. And so they just responded very well to the donkey. But for the most part, they just sort of coexisted happily. And when they were out at pasture, the donkey would be eaten, the goats would be eaten, everyone would be happy.
I just have this mental image of a donkey taking the hat off your head and nudging you into it and saying, you know what, you're terrible at this. Just get with the goats. Just get with the goats where I can see you all. I'm in charge of this shit. Y'all just go eat some grass with the goats.
Yeah, it was very cute. The donkey that was with the female goats, her name was Lily. She was just awesome. She had a big love tank that she needed filling every day. So she would always come up for pets, and she loved to be like rubbed behind the ears. And she would just put her head up on my stomach and let me rub her head. And she would just sit there for several minutes while I rubbed her. She was a big suck, but
I never thought of donkeys as being that affectionate. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. She was so sweet.
That's too funny. You hear them being as jackasses, and you always see them portrayed as being so obstinate. I wouldn't think they would be like, pet me.
Yep. Nope.
Time for you to pet me.
Yeah, exactly. And she was that demanding with it too. Like she was a no nonsense kind of suck, but she would like, it's time for my pets now. Okay, thank you, I'm done.
That's funny. Kind of like a dog.
Kind of like a dog. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. So it doesn't take very many of those donkeys to actually protect the herd, it doesn't sound like.
Nope, there was one donkey with each group. So one donkey with 30, one donkey with, roughly 20.
Mm-hmm. And that was just with the goats. They didn't have like a chicken donkey and a duck donkey.
No.
I just see this donkey following behind the ducks. Like, I can't really waddle like that. That's not comfortable. How come the goats get all the fun? So did the goats mess with the donkey at all? Because, goats are always like, you see YouTube videos of them jumping on everything. And do you see like randomly this goat riding on the back of the donkey at all? Or
no, not at all.
They're just like, okay, yeah, that's the tough guy over there. Don't mess with him. He's just here for our protection.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it was sort of like the donkey. I mean, there was the hierarchy within the goat herd, but the donkey sort of superseded that. And the donkey was just sort of like, okay, they recognized that the donkey was higher up on the chain than they were.
So, you're in this gorgeous area, you're, doing your hippie farming yoga thing all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess let's start with the simple stuff, which was any big takeaways from farming.
Well, I mean, I loved it. And I mean, obviously, it's so much work. Taking care, like farming in any capacity is so much work. Taking care of livestock is so much work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such rewarding work. I mean, those moments where, Lily the donkey would come up and put her head on my stomach and just wanted some rubs. And I made friends with so many of the goats. And, when I was out with them, they would come up and they would want their noses scratched and their ears scratched and stuff like that. And just caring for them, it's a job day in, day out, 7 days a week. They need to be cared for. They need certain things to be done for them. They need to be fed. They need to be brought out. They need to be their barns need to be cleaned. And just the satisfaction of knowing that you're caring for these animals and enabling them to have just a really awesome existence was so gratifying and awesome and wonderful. And I had not really done any farm work on that scale before. And it was wonderful. It was amazing. So it was very gratifying and satisfying experience, and certainly something that I want to somehow be more involved in the future. I mean, in New York City, in the city proper, it'll be hard, but there's lots of opportunity out there. So it's definitely something I want to continue being involved in.
So no big life changes, no big life epiphanies. I need to run away and join the farm kind of stuff.
Well, the West Coast is pretty awesome. Being out there and not in the hot, muggy humidity of the East Coast was great. I definitely was like, why do I live in New York City again when I was out there? But nothing so much that, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm just throwing in everything in the East Coast and staying out West.
Mm-hmm.
No, I wouldn't say, no major, huge life epiphanies. Just really, certainly a really amazing experience from top to bottom.
Well, really cool. Any new book ideas while you were out there? What's going on with your writing?
No book ideas, but I am working on a new writing project. It has nothing to do with food, even though I continue to be a professional cook. I'm doing an online class through UCLA on web series writing. I'm in the process of writing a web series. I actually just finished my first draft of the pilot episode yesterday. So that's what I'm working on. And I have no idea exactly where this is going to go. I think ultimately I want to try to get the web series made, but yeah, we'll see.
So it's zombies, or are you going to keep it a complete secret, or what are we doing here?
No, it's not zombies. It's it's a black comedy. It's sort of a coming age story of two characters, a male and a female.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there going to be any survival tips at all, or is it just...
No, it really is a complete departure from anything I've done before. Yeah.
So when you say web series, I mean, is it completely written, or is this you're writing the script and it's going to be acted out, or what is?
Yeah, exactly. I've written the script for the pilot episode. I sort of have the first season has been completely mapped out. Actually, almost 3 complete seasons have been mapped out, and now it's just a matter of sitting down and writing scripts for individual episodes. So the class that I'm doing right now is basically just a workshop for the pilot. So I've done my first draft, and for the next few weeks, I'm just sort of going to be editing and perfecting that. From there, trying to film it in some capacity. And I mean, there's quite a lot. Web series is an interesting and increasingly popular medium. So I'm excited about the actual filming process too, because that's an area I have no experience in, and it'll be really cool to learn all about that.
Well, that's neat. I mean, I'm sorry to see you depart for any amount of time from writing about zombies and survival, but it sounds like you're going to have a lot of fun with that.
I think so, yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, Lauren, it was sure great talking to you. We'll have to have you on again and to talk about some more of your adventures.
I would be happy to.
And we're looking forward to you sharing your Halloween treats with us. That'll be coming out for the entire month of October.
Me too.
All right. Thanks again, Lauren.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out Lauren's great book, The Art of Eating Through the Zombie Apocalypse, wherever books are sold. You can also connect with her through Twitter at Lauren Does This and through her site at laurenmwilson.com. If you're running, driving, or otherwise occupied, you can get links to all of Lauren's stuff through the show notes for this episode at intherabbithole.com/E139. Be sure to tune in next week as we're joined once again by our man, your man, James Price of Death Valley Magazine. He'll be helping you talk your way into or out of just about anything and protecting your family like a pro executive protection international man of mystery. And one last thing before we sign off today, help us keep the lights on. Support the ITRH show and mission by becoming part of the Roving Horde Armada. You can learn more at itrh.net about all the great benefits membership gets you. Things like encrypted forums with member-only access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one that has never been aired before, a free copy of the book Owning Your Survival, 9 Steps for Surviving, Survival, and Preparedness, access to a 1-hour emergency kits for bugging out and bugging in class with special downloads, and that's just to name a few of the great things you get with your membership. Again, visit itrh.net for more details now. We're counting on supporting members just like you to help us keep the lights on. From the Lone Star State, till next time, stay safe and sound.